Cool. So, hey everyone, good afternoon. We're really, really excited that you're all here. Thank you all for joining us for our third Outcomes4Me webinar in our coronavirus series. I'm really excited about this one because this is going to be our first webinar in the series that's going to step away from the medical talk and really get into the side of the side of the pandemic that's really about the emotional well-being and figuring out how that is really impacting breast cancer patients today. I want you guys to realize that this is going to be more of a talk on practicing self-care, making sure we're supporting those around us, and making sure we're finding ways to deal with everything that's happening to the community. I'm excited about our host. We have a survivor herself, who's also the founder and CEO of the CanSurvivor Network. Kelsey Smith is here, and she's really excited to discuss turning your pain into purpose, which is the name of today's webinar. Really quick, just background. My name's Alon. I'm the director of marketing at Outcomes4Me. Outcomes4Me created an app to help and empower breast cancer patients with the tools and resources to better navigate their care. And the format today is going to be a discussion portion with Chelsea, and then we're going to have a slight Q&A at the end. So we have gotten a few questions prior from our users, and we're going to make sure to get to those and have a format here. But again, we have a Q&A on the side here. So if you put your questions in there, we'll do our best to answer them throughout. So feel free to pop them away. I want to start off, though, by allowing Kelsey to give a little brief introduction to herself, and then we'll jump right in.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much to Outcomes4Me for allowing me to come on and share not only my story, but ways that I can help other people. I feel that your app is so helpful. I have been dealing with symptoms even 5 years later. So I'll go ahead and tell you a little about my situation here in a moment. But what's really, really great, and I want to point this out, is that consistently logging things that are going on with you as you go through treatment can help you recognize patterns. So an Outcomes4Me is really helpful in that endeavor. So I just appreciate so much being a part of this with you, especially.
Oh, thank you. That's awesome. That's really good to hear, actually.
Yeah. So I always, as somebody who's become very resourceful, I always let people know that the app is available to track. So my story starts in 2014. I was 29 years old and I was pretty healthy. I was active and I thought that I was pretty much on a track of, I had a different trajectory of my life. And like everybody else, breast cancer just changed everything. I was diagnosed with stage 2 invasive ductal carcinoma, and my cancer is estrogen positive, it's progesterone positive, HER2 negative, and my oncotype score turned out to be 25. So it was right in the middle, like the dead center of the dead center. So I opted to go for very aggressive treatment. I got a double mastectomy. I went through 5 months worth of chemotherapy. So I was on adriamycin, Cytoxan, and then Taxol to complete it. Plus I was on 5 years of tamoxifen. So around year 4, I became aware of a test called the BCI, which is a predictability test, because as we know, there are so many resources that show up and there are so many organizations doing really wonderful things in the breast cancer world. And this test is an indication, it's a predictability index between 5 to 10 years, the likelihood of cancer reoccurring. Because as we know, 50% of reoccurring cancers happen in that window of time. So I found out recently that my score was rather high. I scored an 8.3 out of a 10 with high likelihood of benefits that tamoxifen or an endocrine therapy treatment would help. So not remotely the way that I expected my treatment to go, but I do have another 5 years of tamoxifen now. So I have personally been grappling with that revelation for the past few months. And so in the meantime, life after, breast cancer treatment, everybody's there and everybody's rallying around you, and you have people coming over to your house and dropping off food. You have appointments to go, and you're kind of in this autopilot mode. And after treatment was over, I expected everything to go completely back to normal. I was pushing myself into exercise. I was making these life decisions. I was trying to have as much fun as I could, which was great. But what happened was I was still not quite feeling the same way the way that I thought I was supposed to feel. I thought I was going to be completely back to normal. And that is not what happens after treatment, not even at all, because side effects of some of the short-term and the long-term treatment start to come into play. There's depression, there's isolation, because people kind of assume that you're good now, being directly out of treatment. So I went through a period of really, really deep depression, had a lot of things change in my life also, a lot of life events, and it was very, very difficult. And it wasn't until about 3 years post-treatment did I begin to start seeking support outside of my circle, outside of the people that were telling me that I needed to let things go or that everything was okay now. I got through the worst of it when I was in this completely new body and had this different mindset, and I faced my mortality, and I just did not know what to do with it. So I ended up seeking support locally with a wonderful group of people called the Victory Center. And that was a breast cancer support group. And I really found that my experiences were incredibly valid. That was so important. And eventually just the support that I had received from everybody led me to the Young Survival Coalition's Yearly Summit, where I saw there were so many people turning their pain into purpose through organizations that I had never even heard of before. I was astounded, and I saw that as an opportunity within, my own life to highlight what they were doing, rethink breast cancer as it stands, and help other people find their purpose through their pain. So I started a podcast, and that was in 2018. And since I've started the podcast, I have turned into a support group facilitator. So I facilitate groups locally here in the Toledo area for young adults with cancer. So I support individuals who are in their 20s, 30s, and 40s who were diagnosed pretty early in their lives when it's not supposed to happen. We have so many misconceptions about what cancer is, and young cancer is really a beast because it just makes you rethink your whole entire life. And so in addition to the support groups facilitation that I provide, I also have a private group for rock stars called the CanSurvivor Network Rock Stars. And I also help Medivivor and Char with support as needed. So that is a bit about my story.
No, that's wow. I mean, that's a crazy, crazy story, and really great that you're able to actually, like you said, turn pain into purpose and help other people. So I kind of want to jump right into that and start off by really talking about what that really means, and what it means to build your own self-care foundation, and what it means to build a foundation for other people as well. So if you can tell us a bit about how you define self-care and what your meaning of turning pain into purpose is, and how that would be a great place for us to start.
Yeah, most definitely. So really, when you receive that diagnosis and those 3 words, that right there is automatically ringing an alarm. Something in your life is not working, whether it's your lifestyle choices, whether it's just your body plain old breaking down on you, or whatever, or if it's a genetic factor, because that's also, obviously a factor in receiving a diagnosis. So this is really, I think it really opens up a time to go back within and focus back on self-love. Like, I am such a huge believer that this is a time for healing, to pour back into yourself as an individual and pretty much reevaluate everything that your life has become up to this point. The diagnosis feels like a ton of bricks as it is. The earlier I feel that you have the foundation of building your own, your own support, your own self-care routine, which is something that's not just, we talk about self-care, and we think that it's just, giving yourself massages, which is, it's a nice little facet of it, but really it's also building realizing, having some self-awareness, which is actually a pillar of wellness we're going to get into in self-care. But it's having a good team on your side who is going to understand and validate your experiences. So, not only your medical team who really gets it, but also to a mental health team. So whether that is, a support group with like-minded individuals or people that are going through the same situation, a professional counselor, you have to find out what that looks like for you. So it's loving yourself through the entire diagnosis, because I think it's so easy to feel like you want to throw your body away. Just check it out, just
Yeah.
no, my body is broken, everything is broken, but it's really not. It's not the case. And if you're building your in recognizing who is trying to help you acknowledge your own feelings about the matter, as opposed to trying to push you through it or trying to bypass the entire situation. Because when you wake up in the morning, first thing you can feel is your body and the differences. Like, for instance, I opted for reconstruction in my case. So because of that, I wake up every morning feeling these implants, that are below my chest. So it's a full 360 experience. So, with building that self-care foundation and finding purpose through the pain, I think it's just so important to really start becoming acquainted with your own boundaries and becoming assertive in the process. And also building your rules on how you want to live your life. Like, for instance, I have 11 rules that are my rules that I made to honor myself throughout this entire time. So, once the turning pain into purpose, really involves more of a self-care foundation, because you have to be solid within yourself before you can begin to help other people. That is what is so crucial. So building your rules, finding things that resonate with you as far as what is going to make you feel good when you wake up in the morning. And from there, it's an inside job when it comes down to it. So, building those rules and following your own boundaries and being assertive is so key, and understanding that you are not responsible for the feelings of other people in the matter.
So that you actually mentioned something that was really interesting there. You were talking about pillars, and there are technically, 7 pillars of self-care. Self-care is very involved, and there's a lot of books and articles written about what self-care means to one person versus another. And it ranges from physical activity to mental well-being to self-awareness, to your point, to eating healthy. So you kind of touched on it already, but I really would love, if you could share any of your, your own rules that helped you the most, if you feel comfortable. And
Sure.
And which pillars do you think are the most important to focus on at different stages throughout your process? The pillars you're focusing on in the beginning are not the pillars you're focusing on in the middle, or even where you're at right now in your process. So what pillars helped you along the way to power through your own journey, and which of those do you think resonate from your own list?
Yeah. So just so everyone knows, the 7 pillars, they are health literacy, self-awareness, physical activity, eating healthy, risk avoidance, good hygiene, and responsible use of products and services. So fundamentally, in the very beginning of this process, obviously we know with COVID and what's going on right now, good hygiene is very important, because we got to wash our hands and we have to protect ourselves in order to protect other people. So, that bar none, good hygiene is, I think it's almost like a given for us. So, but it's okay if for 2 days you want to sit in your sweatpants. I've done it for almost 3. It's just that's what we're going through right now, so much uncertainty during this time. And when I first was diagnosed, health literacy and self-awareness were just 2 major ones, because I had to really understand my diagnosis. I think that people do themselves a disservice when they try to avoid what their diagnosis is. I've met plenty of individuals who they don't want to think about it, they don't want to know. But the more that you know, the more that empowered you become, because the more that you know, you can seek out resources that are there to help you within your situation. I think it's so often that we feel so alone, especially being young, especially being young. This isn't supposed to happen to us, at all. But there are amazing resources out there to, help you out through the journey. But health literacy and listening to your team, I think, is just such a good fundamental pillar, because there are people that have all these opinions about what cancer is, what it means, if there's a cure, and that's not really conducive to your own treatment when it comes down to it. Now, there are people out there who do know about more advanced treatments, who, have walked the walk. So they're really, really great people to listen to. Like, the breast cancer community has taught me so much about health literacy in addition to the medical team, as it is, because, when it comes to the literacy, the more you know, the more empowered that you are. I feel like self-awareness is also key, because this is such a serious diagnosis. This isn't just something that you can simply, one and done and treat. It's a plan. There's anywhere from 5 years to the rest of your life, depending on what your diagnosis is. Because somebody who's got stage 4, they really have got to understand their diagnosis so that they can live their most healthy life, of in making sure that they're following good self-care protocols that are honoring them for the rest of the duration that they are here on the planet. So, one thing for me was, before I was diagnosed, I was a very healthy eater. So that was one thing for me where I had to kind of reevaluate my relationship with food for a bit during treatment. I wasn't so hard on myself about wanting ice cream, because I had mouth sores, for example, and certain foods just made me really nauseous, and I couldn't do it. So now that I have become comfortable with my treatment plan, now that my initial treatment is over, now I can refocus back on the healthy eating and the physical activity. But for me, it looked like taking a break, because I was almost over exercising before I was diagnosed. So I think it really depends on the person, and where, when I read off these 7 pillars and you looked at, you kind of went, oh, and you tensed up, that perhaps might be a place where you need to focus. There is, eating healthy is wonderful. And I think it gets almost overemphasized sometimes, especially in the wellness community. When some people were eating healthy, there were vegans even who get breast cancer. That's one of the biggest misconceptions, I think, that's in this community, is that there is some kind of, magic thing that is, but we don't, cancer has been around since the beginning of time. It's been around since the beginning. So really, it is eating healthy, but that is not necessarily it. And obviously, with going through treatment and having really painful procedures, that responsible use of products and services, you don't want to go overboard, obviously, on the pain medication that you're taking. You really want to be mindful of those kinds of things. So, there's people, because there are people who have endured pain and then have become addicts because of that. So you got to be really, really careful about that, and making sure that you are, discussing those types of things with your team too, because you wouldn't want to go overboard with some of the medication that you're taking. So the, self-awareness throughout the entire phase, I think, also is just essential, just always being aware.
Yeah, I am glad you brought some of the things up you did about, for example, like this, you said, I sat in sweatpants for like 3 days, right? Like, this idea of being not so hard on yourself is really important. So
Yes.
I see self-awareness as like figuring out what you need for you first, and figure out who you are and what you're going to pick for your journey and your experience. But then I want to touch on like the other part of it. Like, right now we're in this crazy pandemic, right? And people are, someone who was eating healthy, who was still able to do their normal routine, is thrown into, even more of a crazy time. And we actually got a question from a user beforehand. She was telling us that her lumpectomy was postponed because of COVID-19. And during these uncertain times and anxious times, she's like, how can I turn this emotional pain and disappointment into something purposeful? And I wanna talk about the idea of like taking something, that you were expecting, your routine that you thought was going to help you on your own, you did your self-awareness, then you get thrown into this. How do you handle that? What would you say to someone like that?
Gosh, I feel for them so deeply, because that is the most terrifying situation that you can undergo, is feeling like you have got to get this thing out of you. That is the first instinct that we have as people that hear those three words. What is what is the first thing that I can do in order to get this out of me? And I would certainly hope that during this time, she is discussing with her medical team what the implications of this is. Because the thing is, and this is kind of, this is the difficulty, is when breast cancer is prevalent in the body, it goes to the lymph nodes. So it can go to the lymph nodes at times. And then from there, when it's in your lymph nodes, then it's filtering throughout your entire body. So that is where, it's very scary. And I want to acknowledge that right there, having that diagnosis and having to wait is just a consequence of really, and I hate to say it, but it's like, we really have to think of who's in power these days. And we have to think of what people are doing with their power, because that is not okay. It is not okay that we have patients who are having to wait and having to, basically put treatment off. And so what I personally would recommend is, at this time, you can write a letter. I know it sounds like very minute, but if everybody who is going through that contacted their government officials and said, this is crazy, this is ridiculous, I should not have to wait for treatment because a global pandemic was poorly handled. And that is the truth of it. You can really help out other people in the process, because right now, feeling so powerless, it's such a valid emotion. And I would really encourage that person to tap into that, to hopefully spark change in what's going on right now, because it is not acceptable.
And you also, I like what you're saying with that, because you're also, in a way, taking back the little control you still have left in a situation like that. It's like
Yes.
you're saying like, well, how can I get to that operation, and what can I do? Or how can I help someone else if I can't help myself right now? Or how can I try to maybe change something so that I can get in there sooner? But this kind of also goes into like another thing that you and I discussed prior to the webinar, which was this idea of like a time vampire, which is this
Oh yeah.
something that like literally sucks your time like a
Yeah.
vampire sucks blood, and something like what this individual is going through, it can become that. It can suck all their energy. It can consume them. They can obsess, and it's very unhealthy. So,
Yes.
I want to know how if you can identify in your own experience or the experience of people that throughout your journey, tips or advice on how to identify. Here, there's like a clear time vampire, but identify a time vampire, and advice on how to get rid of and manage those in the day-to-day life.
Most definitely. My gosh, time vampires are something that, are just, I don't think are emphasized enough. Before this all hit, I think a lot of people spent a lot of idle time doing, like, just aimlessly scrolling through social media. I know that we're on social media. It's kind of like a necessary evil that, we use it to connect, but yet we sometimes find ourselves scrolling through it. There is an application, at least on iPhones. I'm sure that they're on Android now too, but you can identify your screen time. You can set limits on your phone to say, okay, I only want to spend 10 minutes on this app, or I want to spend 15 minutes on that app. And because here's the thing, one of my favorite quotes is by Jeff Olson. The book is called The Slight Edge, and it is, time will either promote you or expose you. So really, time vampires, because that's the resource that you can't get back. It's something that you have ahead of you, but then once it's gone, it's gone. You cannot get that back. So, time vampires, to me, in my personal situation, have been things like aimlessly scrolling through applications and feeling that FOMO, and spending a lot of time ruminating over, okay, my life doesn't look like that right now. That's where you start building a plan, right? That's where you say, okay, well, if I'm going to get there, how am I going to make it happen? Another time vampire, people who always seem to have a crisis, and cannot manage their crises, especially when you're not a licensed therapist. Like, I'm not a licensed therapist, right? But I have spent a lot of time with, people who didn't really have any of my needs or held any space for me, but they always needed something.
Right.
And that right there that's an imbalance. So, that's a big time, in my situation anyway, a big time vampire. And then also just looking around and seeing what is it that, if it's not aligned with your mission, like deciding what your mission is something that I think comes over in time. Like, what is your life's mission and what is your life's purpose? It's not just a clear-cut answer. It's something that just gradually comes out when you do a little bit of self-reflection. And I feel that once you find your mission in life, if there are things that you're doing, or maybe your loved ones are doing, that are not conducive towards that, in my case, it was, things like drinking. There were things like, the time spent on social media to impress other people and to give people this impression of, oh, look what it is that I'm doing. There is something within those individuals that needed to be fixed, because that validation should just be a thing that needs to go out. We should be able to utilize social media for connection. That's yikes, like that. There's things like gossip. Like, where is gossip really going to get me at the end of the day? What is it going to do in order to be able to help spark change in others? Why not just be more direct about feelings and expressing them directly to that person? So that is where, we can really reevaluate all of our own lives collectively and see, how is this helping other people?
Yeah.
When it comes down to it.
I mean, with that said, I mean, let's go into it. Let's talk about gratitude, right? I mean,
Yes. Yes.
we've heard from many users who reached out and struggling to be able to find the ability to be thankful right now, between the pandemic, between their own diagnosis, they're just struggling to be thankful, grateful, because they feel like they're fighting for their lives. And I want to know, how have you found gratitude, and what would you say to women who are struggling to find it today during this pandemic? And furthermore, are there any like third-party resources or centers? You did mention a few, but any more that you recommend that help individuals really find gratitude when they're feeling really down?
Yes. So first off, the people that are here that have shown interest, I want them to take a moment to just acknowledge themselves for showing up and asking these really, really hard questions and wanting to even work through it, because there are people that want to bypass this. That is one thing that you can absolutely be grateful for today, is that you've shown up for yourself and that you're here and you're present and you're listening and you're trying to better your own situation. You are literally trying to change the trajectory of your life into something better. And I think it's so easy to get sucked into shock and negativity. And I would invite you also to hide those things for now. Hide them there. Just there's an option to hide and snooze for 30 days. Just people or things that bring out negativity, just put it on the back burner, because we know that the world is very broken right now. We know that, and we know that there's a lot of work that needs to be done. I think also, and it sounds so simple, it's really just taking stock of the things that are around you. Like right now, I can just tell you, even in this camera shot, I had the blessing of being able to afford a curtain. it's something that is so simple, but yet it's something that I worked hard towards I can look at beauty in my sunroom every day. Something that I worked hard towards to get. It's those little things. Gratitude is all around you. It's in your living situation. It's in your home. It is in the car you drive.
It's
Some
everything.
people don't. It's everything. It's everything. And finding gratitude, I also, like to collect wisdom from other people, and I like to find it in music. So I actually made I made a fun little playlist, and I feel like there's a lot of wisdom in there. There's gratitude everywhere. And also, if you're looking for a book, I personally recommend Brene Brown's The Gifts of Imperfection, because not everybody has it all figured out. Not everybody is winning. And the people who are winning, you never know what they went through in order to get to that point. So we all have our own struggles. And, the way that I see it is, if you were to put my problems and his problems and her problems and their problems into a pile in a circle, you'd probably want to take your problems back. Somehow, some way, we cannot change what has happened to us with this breast cancer diagnosis. And so because we can't change that, we have to find ways that work for us in order to make do with it. It's not easy. Some days you are going to hate it more than others. Like I'll tell you straight up, like tamoxifen kicks my butt. Oh my gosh, I get ovarian cysts. I deal with a lot of fatigue. I have nausea. So I do not have good, I'm very symptomatic with the tamoxifen. However, I understand in the grand scheme of things, it's extending my life. And cancer has been my warning system. It's been my nudge to let me know that my time is limited and I need to make sure that I'm doing something with it. So and I can't, I go through days where I struggle with with having it, and why is it that I have it? And that is perfectly okay to ask those questions. But I can assure you that it is a great revealer of character and of who is really there for you. And so I invite you to, take stock and take gratitude for the good things.
Yeah, it's really important to create routines, new routines, especially for all of us. Like even myself, like my whole
Oh
routine
yeah.
has been completely disrupted. And I found that, what, if I take the extra 10 minutes to drink coffee out of that cup that I really like, it's gonna make me happier today. Like find those
Yes.
new routines. Like you said, you have your beautiful flower, like curtain, and that makes you happy. It's those little things that you're finding new ways to say thank you and be grateful and happy. And it's so important right now because we're all going through so much, especially
Yeah.
breast cancer patients who are struggling even more than anyone else.
Yes. And there was another point that I wanted to make. And then of course it just went out of my brain there for a second. Oh, you said routine. Yes. Oh my gosh. So, having routines in life can really get you, back on solid ground and help you stay grounded. What I also, what has changed for me over time is my 5 favorite ways to move, as I've healed, for example. So, finding those things that you like, as far as movement does go, as far as, what would make you happy waking up in the morning? I've written myself love letters to wake up to in the morning, to myself, to pour into myself, knowing that I'm having a hard time, because that is what keeps me grounded and keeps me, going for the day. But yeah, routine is especially something that can keep you grounded, and then you can thank yourself for following those things. And I do believe it can lead you into better places, for
I love
sure.
that. I love that idea about writing yourself a letter. That's awesome. And it kind of goes into our next little topic I want to talk about, which
Yeah.
was obviously you're someone who's done many wellness webinars and in group discussions. And I'd love for you to share like more tips on how to facilitate them in person and how to find those little tips to help you also feel good within yourself, like you just said. So if you could talk more specifically on how do you set an agenda and ground rules and icebreakers for having very serious conversations with other women and even some men who are dealing with breast cancer.
Yes, most definitely. Let's not forget about the men. They are 1% of the total population, but they have higher mortality rates. They find it later. Same as Black women. Like they tend to find it later, and the mortality rates are higher. So, most definitely that, like, if you want to start anywhere, start there, because that is where so many of our resources need to be allocated towards. So, being a facilitator, it's something that brings me great joy. I am, a person who can hold space. And I think that that is so important, is, realizing that there are other people who are going through it and having their struggles with it. One thing that may be easy for you is difficult for the next person. So there's value, there is incredible value in facilitating. And so, when it's obviously being very resourceful and knowing what's out there. I think that is absolutely crucial. During my podcast, I interviewed, I think about at least like 30 people who were all doing their own thing in regards to what they wanted to do to make change. And, tapping into those resources and sending people over to them to help them. It's a win-win situation, So, being a good listener also is key. And, putting yourself on the shelf for a bit, because there are people that are going to support because they have nowhere else to go. They have no one else to turn to. They may have had one best friend who their relationship completely changed because, this cancer is taken over the life of one person, and it's a space where people want to be vulnerable. They're there in order to hopefully either be vulnerable or help others be vulnerable in the process. So during that time, it is also especially critical to not take in their problems either. You can't fix everybody. You have to give people the space to fix themselves, because really that's how we learn when it comes down to it. So I incorporate something that I call like the purple flame, where I hold the space for them, and everything that they're going through, I listen intently, and then I put it in the purple flame, and there it goes. And when I am done and I leave, then that was the time that I spent there, and I can get back to myself. And because I know that as I get back to myself and I work on myself, I can then help others along the way. I can help them see the light, and privacy obviously is something that is essential. You do not want to go to a group where you're feeling like somebody's going to leak something that you have said that is completely mortifying for you, because these really, really intense topics come up, whether, it's intimacy problems with your partner, or friendships that are breaking down, or, there's or like my doctor isn't listening to me. I mean, you have all of these things. So, what I recommend is just, kindness and respect for the individuals, and, validating their stories. And, really, in order for me to build an agenda, it does help me to go to other groups and see what it is that they're doing and what it is that works. And I think, like personally, like my methodology is, as everybody's going around the room, and I learned this from the Victory Center. So as everybody is going around the room to talk, they're able to share what their diagnosis is, and then the one topic that they maybe want to discuss for the day. And then we go to we go around, so everybody has their time, and then people can delve into deeper discussions. So, I feel that what another key too is just not invalidating the experiences of others, because that can be gaslighting.
Yeah, I think it's this idea of taking, listening and validating is so important, and giving them the space, but also making sure not to like take it home with you and let it consume you. And that's very good advice for people who are new to this and going into it and having those groups and support groups, you a lot of people tend to want to help almost too much, and that could be very toxic in itself.
Yes.
It's that time vampire, right? Like,
Yeah, it can create codependency, and you don't want that.
yeah, you need to be very careful of that. So I'm really glad you touched upon that. But the last real question I really want to address is the other part of it, where have you ever been in a situation where you felt that someone was so helpless and so alone that you couldn't just walk away and you have to call in someone to intervene? Like, where is the line of saying, like, this person is really not okay, like there's something going on here deeper? Like, how do you handle that? What do you do in a situation like that that's very could be very awkward for some women, could be very difficult? So I'm curious how you would manage that.
Yeah, most definitely. So, knowing that I am simply I'm a facilitator and I'm a listener, but I can also pivot people towards professional resources that will get them to where they need to be. And I think that it's a good time to go one-on-one. It's a good time for, because a lot of the times that hopelessness feeling is just feeling invalidated. It's that feeling that, like, I'm not heard. And in 2016, after treatment was over and my depression came in, it was like my negative self-talk was like off the charts. It was horrible. And I got this book by somebody named Melissa Ambrosini called Mastering Your Inner Mean Girl. And I felt like that was really helpful, because sometimes what happens in people's minds, like these tape loops play of, I'm this, I'm that, or, I'm not grateful enough because I'm not feeling good after treatment. And I mean, those were the kinds of things I wanted to do, all the things that I was feeling rather. And, at that point, when it becomes overwhelming for that person, it's always important to direct them towards a mental health professional that will help them out. So there are survivors that there are professionals who are also cancer survivors. So they're really excellent resources, because they get it from not only a clinical standpoint of having their expertise that they have been taught, but also that direct knowledge of actually going through what you've gone through. They've had their own challenges and their own bouts, because just because you are in the medical community doesn't necessarily mean that when you become a patient, you're on the other side of the coin, that everything's going to be hunky-dory for you. It can be really difficult. So, what's really important is following through with people. I think we're so like, call me if you need me. That it's such a popular notion. And, call me, I'm here to talk. I'm here to talk. But when we're going through the most difficult points and our depression is really loud at that point, for example, like, I can just speak from personal experience, that those depressed voices tell me that I don't matter sometimes, or that my opinion doesn't matter. So somebody to kind of bust through and break that is so helpful. So it's checking in afterwards, after the conversations, and going to that person and saying, hey, I know you were having a really difficult time since we talked last, and we talked about maybe you going on a walk, or, this is obviously like pre-COVID, right? But even so, even if you are going outside, it's just, you can literally just sit there and just get grounded in the roots and just feel the grass and know that there is so much life in that grass that you can't even see. It's just, it's incredible. But, I always invite people to get grounded and then take an additional step, because that gets you out of that loop. So taking the next step to make that phone call to the counselor, or, calling that organization that is going to help you with your particular problem, and then following up with people. So I recommend for anybody who is a facilitator to carry around a notebook of some sort. Like, I have a notebook, but then I also have a day planner. So then I can sit there and I can write people's names in of the individuals that I want to check in on, and make sure, hey, I'm checking in on them. I'm acknowledging them and what's going on. I saw something maybe on social media that was a little bit disheartening. So let me go ahead and reach out to them and just check in and see if they're okay, and if there is a way that I can constructively help in a good way. PTSD is something that is so real within our community that we kind of whisper. It's so directly correlated in society with soldiers. And it's so true, because I mean, it's a terrible thing for a soldier to go through, to have to make those life or death decisions and being on the front lines. So I have the deepest respect for anybody who's had to endure something like that and having to make hard decisions. And breast cancer also invites post-traumatic stress to show up, because you have faced your mortality. You have gone through these terrible surgeries, which is just the best solution that's available right now. Because, you know, like I've said, like the world can be a very broken place. We're all trying to fix it the best way that we can. And you know, and PTSD is just something that a lot of people, I think, whisper about, like, oh, you know, I'm really, it's trauma. Like, you have gone, you know, losing your breast, or losing a portion of your breast, or getting a stage 4 diagnosis that is deeply traumatic on physical, emotional, you know, spiritual levels. It's everything. So, you know, really, if you're feeling hopeless, it's okay. It's okay to feel that way. And you need somebody who is going to tell you that it is okay. It is an emotion that you will, you know, absolutely get through. It's going to be exceptionally hard at times, but finding, you know, ways that work for you, like your, you know, your own personal rules and your boundaries, and asserting those things is, you know, going to help you, hopefully. So, yeah, it's just, you know, and especially if I hear like somebody saying that they want to die, or they went through this and they want to die, that is right there, you know, it's very triggering for me.
Yeah.
And that is where I absolutely walk them and help them with getting resources that they need in order to persevere and, you know, get out of that funk.
It's so interesting you say that, because we just posted this week actually on our Instagram, just it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to
Yes.
not be okay. And you really are talking about taking it to the next level. You're so spot on when you say that people are
Yes.
always like, oh, call me, call me, call me. Well, you know what? Don't say call me, just check in. Do the work.
Do it.
Do the work. Just actually check in, because the person might
Yeah,
not know how to say, I need you to call me. And then it might be too late. So it's really
exactly.
important to do that work. But yeah, I mean, with that said, this has been super great, super informative and helpful. I'm really glad you joined us. If there's anything else you want to say before we kind of close out, feel free. If not, you know, again, I'm just going to say our little spiel. We're Outcomes for Me. Please make sure to download our app and use us as a resource. Please feel free to reach out to Kelsey through her Instagram or through her website, the CanSurvivor Network. Yeah, if you have anything else left to say, please feel free.
Yeah. So I just want to thank you for your time. Thank you for allowing me a platform to come on and talk about these things, because I know that, you know, people just mentally are really going through it right now.
Yeah.
It's a really tough time. It's a very, very tough time for everybody involved. So, you know, if you feel like you need a group where you want to be heard, and you know, you need a place to go, I do have the CanSurvivor Network Rockstars. We'll go ahead and send it over to you. I am on Instagram as pretty.resilient, so you can find me there. And yeah, just feel free to get directly in touch with me. I also facilitate groups in person. If you are in the Toledo, Ohio area, we meet the first Thursday of every month. And so starting, I think in the next few weeks, I will be facilitating a Zoom, like another Zoom support group, because I did it a couple months ago and I need to do it again. So I will be doing that soon. So if you want to join that group, please, you know, please reach out directly. I'm telling people, call me. But yeah, so yeah, and as a token of my appreciation, you know, I really feel that music is really helpful during this time. Like if you're at home, it's such a good opportunity to explore all of the music and all the expression that's out there. There are so many new releases that are coming out. And so as a token of my appreciation, I put together a pretty resilient soundtrack is what I called it. And these are songs that I feel like kind of get me out of that funk, that are full of really, really awesome tidbits and nuggets of wisdom, and just generally make me feel good, or make me want to just get up and dance and move my body, and you know, make me feel that I really am connected with everybody in this universe, and I feel a little less alone. So I hope that that invokes the same type of feeling in you if you choose to listen to it. So yeah, that's all I got. Thank you everybody for tuning in. And I certainly hope that this helps you out, because you are most definitely not alone in these feelings.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to get that playlist, feel free to direct message us on Instagram at Outcomes4Me, or reach out to Kelsey, directly through her Instagram account as well at Pretty.Resilient. And yeah, this will be on Facebook Live as well. So if you want to come back to the video and rewatch it or share it with friends, feel free. And yeah, thank you all for joining us today. This was really, really great. Stay safe, everyone.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Be kind, be well, and keep rocking on. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.